Broadcasting live from our studio in Boston, Solutions Review is proud to showcase Nexthink in the Solution Spotlight, a unique online event for industry professionals.
I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review, and welcome to this Solution Spotlight featuring Nexthink, and more specifically, how Nexthink's collaboration experience can help you handle the growing challenges of supporting both remote and hybrid work environments. Decentralized collaboration with Teams and Zoom is accelerating, and the answer to employee-reported issues isn't as simple as fix your Wi-Fi. Collaboration applications are vital to the productive employee experience, with single employee issues impacting multiple teams. Because IT lacks visibility into employee hybrid work environments and networks underlying these tools, almost every employee's productivity can be negatively impacted without IT knowing, until the tickets blow up. For this Solution Spotlight, we're going to dig into how customers are using Nexthink to avoid this nightmare scenario with proactive visibility, staying ahead of Zoom and Teams issues before they become top call drivers, rapidly identify and resolve complex collaboration issues at scale, and hold Microsoft and Zoom accountable when the problems are actually on their side. And joining us to walk us through the Nexthink solution is Dave Wagner, Senior Product Manager, and Justin Craig, Solutions Consultant. Gentlemen, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having us.
Well, I think it's a perfect time for you to be here because this topic we're seeing more and more in our coverage of the enterprise technology space across all categories, and for obvious reasons. It's part of the entire transformation of modern work these days, and so I'm excited to get into it. But before we do, I'd love to just learn a little bit more about each of you briefly. Justin, why don't you just give us a little bit of background about how you've kind of arrived at Nexthink and a little bit of the opportunity you're seeing here.
Absolutely. So I have a long tenure in the EUC space. I owned a computer business whenever I was in college, actually, and then went to a software provider that provided software for the heavy truck industry, and then on to another large EUC vendor as well. And then I landed at Nexthink fairly recently. So I've been in the EUC space for quite a long time now. So we're looking forward to kind of telling you a little bit about Nexthink today and how we can help organizations improve not only internal processes, but kind of understand what's going on inside their organization.
Yeah, great. Dave, you and I have talked before. I know your background, but I don't think everybody who might be tuning in is familiar with everything you're bringing to the table. But please give us a little bit of overview of yourself.
At the risk of boring you by hearing it again, so I've been in the industry for a few decades. We'll leave it at that. Most of my career has been focused either originally on server side things like that. After that, I got into a couple of startups around analytics software to really improve the overall performance and experience, if you will, of applications that are being run to support the business. I've been at Nexthink a bit over 2 years now, where I'm really working closely with the product team and our sales organization to really help drive the success of customers solving the problems that Nexthink solves, which is really the best way I can describe it. And this is why I came here. But one of the customers described it with passion. Once I was blind, but now I see. And there's no better space to eliminate blindness, I would submit, than Teams and Zoom right now. So, for example, if you look at recent research here, it's critical. These applications are critical and visible for pretty much every company. Gartner surveys have been done that 75% of companies consider this critical to their daily operation. If you even speak to the HR side of the organization for employee satisfaction and retention, 71% of HR leaders say employees must be able to dynamically and interactively collaborate no matter what. And in this hybrid world, this work from home, work from anywhere world, that means Teams, it means Zoom. And if you ask the employees themselves, 95% of the Fortune 1000 employees consider Teams and Zoom to be absolutely critical to their ability to be successful in day-to-day business. And the biggest challenge here is it's not just that it's one ticket or one issue. I was reminded of this the other day. Anyone having a session issue in a broader call is impacting everyone on the call. So it's a productivity loss multiplier. It's a ticket multiplier effect. And by the way, nobody is shy about reporting poor performance with Teams and Zoom. But the challenge here, and by the way, this is a broader challenge that Nexthink solves more completely than just Teams and Zoom applications. EUC teams are struggling to understand what's going on, what is the user experience. By the time they get a ticket, it's too late. And so as a result, they're always reactive. So they only discover a collaboration issue after the tickets are opened. Or maybe Microsoft or Zoom will tell them, hey, US East region is down or something like that. Of course, then everybody's impacted. And the reason for this is these teams don't have the data they need, and more importantly, the data they need in complete context of everything else that supports the success of a call. And then thirdly, they're at vendor mercy. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to companies that literally it can take weeks to actually get problems resolved if the company doesn't have the data they need to really prove to Microsoft or Zoom that, hey, look, we know this is an issue with your instance. Perhaps it's a compatibility issue. Maybe it's an availability issue. Maybe it's something else. But without that data, you really can't have a productive relationship with those vendors when problems do occur. And problems do occur. Let me just share you an anecdote. We've had collaboration experience out in the broader worldwide market for about 4 months now. In those 4 months, we've gained telemetry on over 140 million Teams and Zoom calls. And 6% of those calls, across 140 million of them, are poor by the very vendor definitions provided by Microsoft and Zoom. So there's a big problem space here. And as a result, IT's reactive, they fall further behind. It's slow to resolve these very complex problems. And we've got some really good examples there, and Justin will be doing some demonstrations around some really critical use cases. And again, this vendor intransigency, I can't tell you how many times people have told us about the vendors are simply slow to fix what you can't prove to be their issue. And so you get into that universal IT, in this case vendor, blame game. So Nexthink collaboration experience is really designed to give IT teams the visibility they need, the data they need to opt every employee's call and session, and to do so not just reactively but proactively, so that for example, first time an issue starts to build, be alerted to that. We'll give you examples of that, to it and resolve it, and then automate the resolution of it to all potentially affected before they even are impacted. We've got some good examples there. So for example, the major use case class around speeding MTTR and mean time to diagnose. Collaboration experience really is designed to eliminate the blind spots with the details you need from the vendor telemetry, which, by the way, many customers take today and dump into a data lake. But take that telemetry in real time and feed it into an analytics solution, Nexthink, in the Infinity platform, and the ability to put everything in context with the versions of executables involved, in context with the performance of the devices that they are using, in context with the network performance and more, so that you have a complete end-to-end view in context of the call of what's going on. And this allows really rapid diagnosis. And by doing so and being alerted to these issues before they become critical, you can actually limit downtime. So let me give you an example here. This is an American technology company that fixed a very complex Teams and Zoom performance problem in 5 minutes, literally in 5 minutes. And it was a really complicated one. It's one near and dear to my heart because this is actually at Nexthink. All right. We had rolled out a new default VPN client, and about a week later, I noticed a slowdown in my internet post Teams and Zoom calls. I would have a Teams call, and all of a sudden it would grind to a halt, or a Zoom call, and it would grind to a halt. And my network would go from gigabit fiber speed down to literally a ping of 10 seconds and less than 100 KB per second. And yet, sitting in the same chair, my iPhone and my iPad had 400 megabytes a second. So I knew it wasn't the network. Now, this occurred before we had Nexthink Experience configured. So we dialed in. I opened a ticket with the IT team. This is before we were GA with configuration experience, and our collaboration experience, excuse me. It was before we were GA, so we hadn't deployed it in our IT team, but it was deployed in our development environment. I had the collector on my machine. I logged a ticket, and the first thing IT's team said was they drilled in, they looked, and they said, Dave, your Wi-Fi's bad. And I said, I know my Wi-Fi's not bad. I know it's not bad because it's really fast right here, and my laptop's right here. I've got something that's causing it. And so we used our collector with Nexthink collaboration experience to drill in and find and fix the problem. And the way it worked was we have this parallel view of related technology of telemetry that was able to see, yes, I was having a problem with my teams.exe because immediately right afterward, my Wi-Fi signal strength would degrade immediately after a team session. And it was the weirdest thing our IT team had ever seen. But drilling in further, we actually were able to correlate that with the crash of an API related tool, DAX3 API. And this happened to be related to the Dolby sound on my headset. And so we had this crash of an application that caused Teams Wi-Fi to go slow, which was causing the issues with my collaboration experience sessions. And so by doing that, we were able to, again, using broader Nexthink capabilities, determine the exact version of the binary on my machine, and more importantly, note that there were 140 other devices in the company that had the exact same DAX3 API. We were all on the same version, so we executed another Nexthink technology, the ability to literally drill down and look into the details on it, and we discovered that the actual executable itself was corrupted. And so we finally used Nexthink's automated remediation capability to roll out automatically and install a new version of that DAX3 API executable on my laptop and fix the problem. Now think about how long it would take if you didn't have the ability to relate that technology together. So a real example of a multi-dimensional problem that at first glance looked like it was Wi-Fi. Everybody is wired, if you will, forgive the joke, to think that when you have performance problems with Zoom and Teams, oh, it's the network, it's Wi-Fi. It might be, but that might be a symptom of an underlying problem that could be very pervasive. If, for example, I had had an out-of-date version of that application, Nexthink would be able to show that and update my version. Or perhaps there's 100 other employees that haven't run into this problem yet. They have the same executable. We could update them. So it's a broader capability. So with that, what I'd like to do is turn over to Justin to demonstrate a little bit more live in the product, the kinds of things you can do around speeding mean time to resolution and diagnosis. Justin, over to you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Dave. Great introduction there. Thanks so much. So there are so many great things that Nexthink can do for you to help turn on the lights for your organization. But if I were writing a title for today's discussion, it would be, hey, Dave, your audio is really terrible for some reason, and maybe you should try closing out of Teams or reopening Teams and seeing if that fixes your problem. And if that doesn't work, then maybe you should reach out to IT, where they may or may not be able to identify your issue with the tools that they have available. Obviously, that would be a ridiculous title, but the reality is, though, that the frustration that end users experience when it comes to collaboration tools is very real. Things like poor audio quality, poor video quality, issues with peripheral hardware, like you mentioned before, like microphones, headsets, those types of things are in no way unusual. And, you know, most organizations don't really have a consolidated tool that they can use to help them see, diagnose, and fix those Teams or Zoom call issues. So I may be able to see device issues, and I may be able to even see call issues with either Teams or Zoom. But unless I have the network team, the collaboration software team, my data engineering team, and a development team that has the time and the ability to create useful dashboards, I'm probably hours or even days away from even identifying my problem, let alone fixing it. With Nexthink collaboration experience that Dave led in for us there, we marry that rich data that we gather from the devices with the call diagnostic information that's already being collected by Teams and or Zoom, right? Things like round trip time, packet loss, jitter, frame rate, and really identifying and giving you a full picture and the visibility necessary to make decisions related to where those underlying issues might exist. So one of the many ways that we can provide value is through consolidation of this data in a live dashboard type of format, right? These live dashboards are available out of the box and are fully customizable to be able to support almost any use case. So the ability to filter on these dashboards by device type or connection type or whatever the case may be, really helps you identify quickly by organizing the call quality issues in a very consumable way. So we can very quickly review trends over time, while also helping you determine and focus your time and energy to where the issue actually resides, right? So most organizations are typically very reactive today. And our goal is to help you shift left and really spend more time working on issues that'll have the greatest impact on your organization. So not only can we help you identify Teams and Zoom call issues, we can help you turn the lights on for issues affecting other devices and users that you didn't even know you had. So at a glance, as I mentioned before, we can see that our number of poor call quality issues has gone up significantly over the past few days. But what we don't know at this point is why. And it's easy to simply blame Wi-Fi or say, "Look, Mr. End User, uh, we can't help you with Teams issues if you're working from home." The reality, though, is that systematic issues do exist, like version specific issues. But unless you have a rock solid case for your tech support teams at Microsoft and Zoom, for example, the chances of you getting any programmatic changes in a timely fashion are pretty slim. So whether it's a Teams version specific issue or if it's an entirely different application altogether that's causing poor call quality, we can help you get to the root cause. So one of the ways that we can do that in case of this reactive approach that we're starting with here in conversation is to provide you a timeline view that gives you visibility into exactly what was happening on the device at the time you had the Teams or Zoom call failing, right? So we can see things like audio quality and video quality and so forth, the specifics about that specific call. But in under normal circumstances, you wouldn't be able to actually see what's going on in the on the actual device at the time that it's actually failing, right? So sometimes, it could be a rogue piece of software. So, like in this case, I can see that during my team's call, I can see that Chrome was, you know, cranking out at 100% CPU utilization, and the same for memory utilization. So it could be really any rogue piece of software or a runaway web browser tab that's causing the machine not to operate properly. Nexthink can help you equip you with the tools necessary to identify and resolve either case, right? So Dave, maybe you could tell us a bit more about how organizations can use Nexthink collaboration experience to proactively identify those Teams and Zoom call issues.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. That was a really good segue because it's one thing to be able to drill in and diagnose an individual employee's problem. But you know what? Philosophically, the reality is once an employee reports a ticket, it's kind of too late. And one of the beauties of the broader Nexthink platform, and again, this applies to frankly any application. It doesn't have to be collaboration experience with Teams and Zoom. It can be any web application, any desktop application, anything employees interact with from a technology perspective, is the ability that our Infinity platform gives customers to get proactive, to be alerted to pending problems before they reach that critical threshold. And so, for example, and Justin, I'll ask you to share this in just a moment, but for example, what if you could be alerted on the fact that, you know what, our normal poor call quality ratio is increasing. And maybe it's increasing for a certain region or a certain cohort of users based on persona or job role. That enables teams to get ahead of the problem, drill in using those capabilities that Justin just showed you, and figure out what's the problem before it's actually impacting really bad call quality or impacting large numbers of employees. So it's the ability to be alerted on trends that are occurring in things that impact call quality. Justin, you want to show a little bit about how you go about doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the ways that we can help, is for those organizations that are kind of already on that shift left journey, where they're trying to spend more time finding issues than simply reacting to them. We can use Nexthink collaboration experience to help you resolve those issues before they actually have a negative impact on the end user, and to alert you when Nexthink recognizes that an issue is outside of the normal threshold. So in this particular case, we can see that we have an upward tick of alerts or issues, over the past few hours. Additionally, what we can see as well is that we have, some high priority um, issues related to Microsoft Teams and bad call quality by city in this particular case. And in this particular case, we can see that Boston location is having issues, but we could really create an alert on nearly any metric or alert condition, or that's to say that, I want an alert to be triggered when a specific metric is identified and only when it meets a specific device or user count threshold criteria. So I may even want to use an alert or event being triggered to create an incident in my ITSM system, or maybe another third-party tool that I can use for automation or archival purposes. So upon further investigation in this particular case, you can review other poor call quality situations, and we can start to then further tailor that query to meet any specific needs related to the information that you're attempting to gather, because ultimately all the data is there on the backside. It's using the Nexthink solution to help summarize that data in a way that will get you the information that you're looking for. So Dave, obviously I'm a bit biased, but this is some really powerful technology, and I really can't wait to get it in everyone's hands.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. I just let me point out the following. The beauty of the Nexthink platform is that all the data we're getting across all these disparate elements that underpin an employee's experience of using, in this case, collaboration applications, is related. So you can do things like collate the data over time with confidence because you know it's related data. It's not that age-old, a butterfly flapping its wings in Indonesia causes a hurricane, 3 months later in the Eastern Pacific Ocean. This is related data. We know every aspect of the detail associated with each employee's experience of the entire technology stack underpinning the performance of these. I'm reminded of a conversation we had not that long ago, actually. Very large company that was talking about, well, how is this different than, well, we just take telemetry we get out of Microsoft and we're dumping it into our BI data lake. And then we take data from our network tools and we dump it in our BI data. And I said, how long does it take when a problem occurs? They said, well, we have to get our Teams expert, and we have to get our network expert, and we have to get our end user computing desktop expert and our application expert. And then they have to go off and write a query in Tableau and go try and surf this. And they're like, it takes hours and hours, sometimes days. We've pre-related that data as it's ingested in real time, and it's available to click around it as Justin was showing you. So that's why I'm excited about it. This is revolutionary technology at Nexthink, and applying it to Teams and Zoom, which are arguably the most visible applications, really just takes that to the next level, if you ask me. So with that kind of segues to me anyway into that other third use case really, and that is we're empowering IT teams to have a fully informed perspective about the aspects of the problems their employees are experiencing with these applications. And in many cases, that detailed data is exactly the time I need when the problem is, for example, on the vendor back-end side of things. Many people will remember that it was not quite 2 weeks ago, there was a pretty major Teams outage, and our customers were using collaboration experience to actually monitor Microsoft's ability to restore service because it's not instantaneous. And what they wanted to do was be able to inform their employee community of what the status really was as they would be experiencing it while they awaited Microsoft fixing it. So that was one case where Microsoft was aware of the problem because it was a reported outage. But in other cases, it's not quite so easy. In other cases, it might be Microsoft, it's on your vendor backend, it's on your customer internal network, or it's your problem. And being able to have that session data, that collaboration data, again, in full context by geography, by device type, by every aspect of the employee population, really helps to, frankly, hold the vendors accountable. And there have been many opportunities for customers to take advantage of that. Jen, you want to show a little bit about how that would take place?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so as we discussed previously, we can see a ton of things from our device view, right? And being able to see this in sort of by way of what we call our IT DVR of sorts, to really be able to correlate an issue to an actual fix. But if we bounce back into this live dashboard, we can start to dig into the potential root cause of the issue, because in some cases, maybe it's regional, right? So in this particular case, I can see that the United States of America, as a country, is having the most issues, right? And then as I dig in further, now I can see that there's poor call qualities by city. In this particular case, Boston is most problematic. So maybe it's regional. Maybe it's an issue that's not even specific to your organization at all, right? But sometimes you just need to be able to have the info to be able to prove it. So in this case, we can really start to pin down exactly where the issue is occurring, so that we can try to apply a suitable fix, or at least be able to, at a minimum, engage our Microsoft or Zoom support teams to help point them in the correct direction. So in this particular case, we can see that, we have a ton of issues related to, we'll say, specific to Wi-Fi, for example, right? So Dave, have you ever heard the term, and I'm sure everyone's familiar with this, have you ever heard the term, it's not what you say, but how you say it?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Reaching out to an end user proactively and identifying or addressing that issue says a lot about your IT team. And it really promotes trust between your end user customer and the IT staff. So with Nexthink, we can help you reach out to those end users either in a manual or automated fashion, in order to be able to send them potentially a fix by way of what we call campaigns. So in this particular case, imagine this said your Teams performance. It really could be any application, right? It wouldn't just have to be Teams. It could be Teams. It could be Zoom. It could be any web application like SAP in this particular case, right? Your Teams performance is being affected by your version of Chrome installed on your device. Would you like us to update it, right? And if they were to click yes, we could send them a note through here that just simply says, hey, your Chrome upgrade has been queued. We'll let you know when it's finished, right? So then we, after Chrome is updated, maybe they don't even know that they have an issue, or they haven't put two and two together to say, yeah, I've been having an issue, and I'm not going to reach out and create a ticket quite yet, because I really don't understand why it's happening. I could create a ticket, but it's not going to do any good. In this particular case, we've proactively reached out to them to say, hey, I don't know if you know it or not, but you've been having performance issues. We see that Chrome in this case is the reason for that particular issue. Would you like us to update it? And reaching out to them goes a very long way in ensuring that the end user has that exceptional experience, because it's not always Wi-Fi, but sometimes it is, right? So the key is being able to identify the difference, so that we're not further frustrating users by misinterpreting the issues that they're having, right? So I'll bring it back to you, Dave, for a quick summary before we do some tackling of some Q&A.
Thanks, Justin. Yeah, I'm reminded of what one of our customers told me. I asked to summarize what we brought to the table for them, and they said, once I was blind and now I can see. And that really is a very powerful capability. From a proactive standpoint, that ability to reach out to the employees and let them know, hey, we're working on an issue that we believe might be affecting your Teams and Zoom performance. They might not have already experienced it. Again, back to the example I used before. We found a problem with this Dolby add-on for sound for a certain class of headsets that 150 employees shared. Mm-hmm. What if that had not been a corrupted executable on my machine? What if that had been an out-of-date executable that was shared by another 100 employees that hadn't seen the problem yet? And again, reaching out to them saying, hey, we're aware of a problem. We are going to upgrade the version of a driver or an executable or a Chrome browser or whatever that underlying issue is, gets the IT team ahead of those issues. And that really builds that trust that you're talking about. So again, at the end of the day, again, with the Nexthink Infinity platform and in particular, as well as collaboration experience, it's about seeing and diagnosing and fixing problems much, much faster. And again, that data lake example that we talked to, very, very large company that was take 3 experts 4 to 8 hours to go out there and construct the queries to fish that data lake of the telemetry that, yes, they got for free from Microsoft and Zoom. That telemetry was in isolation, and it takes a lot of time to put it together. Now imagine that you're a company that where you're the normal 5-6% of your calls are poor quality, and you have 1,000 employees. That could be hundreds or thousands of calls a day. You can't spend that kind of time.
No.
You just can't. Other examples, we've talked to customers who found hardware incompatibilities with headsets that were varied by region and that turned out to be regressions in the vendor back end. Vendor had updated their back end server for in this case it was Zoom in one region but hadn't done it on the other, and it broke a rollout of a standardized set of hardware globally. So you spend a lot of money on shared hardware. If it's not going to work or if it has issues, you need to understand that beforehand. And then again, we talked at length about this. Really manage your vendor relationship as a true partner. Give them the information they need to open their eyes to help them help you. So with that, I'd love to turn it over to our Q&A. Doug, I think we turn it over to you.
You do indeed, and I'm happy to jump in with a few questions. Some of them may seem a little rudimentary to you, but I think, at least from our perspective, they're worth asking. Dave, what's the difference between a call and a session? And actually, this is a question I have because I'm not exactly sure. And why does that does that make a difference?
Yeah, so a call is, I mean, for example, we're having a call here. It doesn't happen to be on Teams and Zoom. It's on a StreamYard. Okay, the call is the experience for everyone. The session experience is each of our individual experiences in a call. And so if you consider very large meetings within companies or across companies, you'll have a call hosted by someone, and then you'll have a whole series of sessions that participate in that call. And so you could have metrics that say, yeah, no, the average call quality for everybody involved was really good. But again, if 1 or 2 people are having a problem with the session, it disrupts everyone in the call. And so it's critical to look at both call telemetry and session telemetry, and that's the distinction.
Some of this information you can get through some of the collaboration tools. If you have Teams, which we do, you can get some of this through Azure. How is this different than some of the things that you might be able to get through the actual applications themselves?
Yeah, that's a great distinction and a great question. So it's different in that with the Teams call information by itself or the Zoom call information by itself, you really don't have full context as to what's actually happening on the specific device that you're working on, right? So in the instance that I showed earlier in that timeline view, we can start to correlate specific issues that are happening, whether it's a Wi-Fi issue or whether it's a device specific issue like memory utilization or an app crash or an app freeze or whatever the case may be. You can start to correlate what's happening on the device at the actual time that you're having that Teams call quality or Zoom call quality issue. That's the difference.
Yeah, it's that ability to have that information related together across all aspects of everything needed to deliver the total experience, as opposed to just the telemetry in isolation. And that's really, that at the end of the day, that's the Nexthink secret sauce, our ability to bring all of that disparate telemetry together, relate it together in a way that speeds resolution and makes you more proactive.
Well, I actually want to talk about that secret sauce in a bit, but I got another few questions that are more specific. This one is for Teams. Does this integration have dependencies on Active Directory? And I'll ask Dave. I'll ask you.
Yeah, I'll let Justin handle that. It's a little more technical, but yeah. Answer is yes. So
yeah, I would leave it at yes. Yeah, there are sometimes when you could leverage, so in the instance of Teams, for example, we are gathering that information through Azure. So there is definitely some Azure and Azure AD integration required for that. Yes.
Okay. Well, then I don't know who to ask the next one of. So I'm gonna.
We'll figure out in real time.
Yeah,
we'll jump ball.
Yeah.
I understand that, again, this is I understand separate, there's a separate Nexthink SKU But what licensing is required from a Teams
Okay.
Zoom perspective?
Okay, so as you might have gleaned from our presentation today, Nexthink Infinity platform has a massive amount of capabilities. It's our big data backend that takes all this different telemetry in real time and things like that. So Collaboration Experience is an optional add-on product which is licensed, which then enables you to feed that real-time telemetry from Teams and Zoom into the platform and enrich it with all the other data you get with our base license, which is our Infinity platform. So if you think back to the device view that Justin showed a few moments ago, the ability to look at each device and each user, their CPU, their memory, which executables are running, their network, all that kind of information that isn't Teams and Zoom, all that data comes from our platform. You license Collaboration Experience, and that data timeline and everything else is enriched with that additional contextual information from Teams and Zoom.
All right. Well, speaking of Teams and Zoom, one of the questions is we use WebEx. And what about us with regard to an expanded collaboration experience to support WebEx?
Okay, so two answers to that. Today, we don't support it with Collaboration Experience, but it is on our roadmap. We're a vendor. We attack the market based on where the volume is, and the clear leaders are Teams and Zoom. That said, WebEx is a web browser accessed application, and as such, we have the ability within the Nexthink Infinity platform and our product called Application Experience to ingest web application telemetry. So we can pull it in that way. So we can look as it's experienced in the browser. It's not quite exactly the same down to the call quality level, but that capability is available today.
Excellent. Actually, there's a straight up question around poor call quality. What do you define as a poor quality call or poor quality call quality?
I'll take a stab at that. I'll take a stab at that, Justin. If I get it wrong, let me know.
Yeah, please.
I'll use Teams for example. Microsoft actually have a specification that they use to define and they use when they are monitoring their ability to deliver service of poor call quality, and it's a combination of it's an algorithmic combination of about 11 different factors of various things like frame rate, jitter, packet loss, all these sorts of things. It's documented out there on the web if you look it up. We use that as our baseline definition of poor call quality. We treat Zoom similarly.
Excellent. Well, so while we have a few more minutes, and we do, let's talk about this with regard to what you're seeing in terms of the extent to which collaboration has now become important to organizations. I mean, you must be seeing, just from a user perspective, from a volume perspective, the transition that's happened here with regard to how organizations are collaborating. Dave, can you give us a little bit of perspective? I mean, not to say you can offer a deeper perspective.
Well, I'll start at the very highest level, right? Like I said, we launched Collaboration Experience a few months back, and we're up to, I'd have to take a stab. I'm guessing probably 60 customers now. Literally just in the last 6 weeks, we've gone from ingesting data from those 60 customers from 100 million calls to 140 million in just 6 weeks. So these things are massively used. I mean, we all know it. We all instinctively know it. We all use them every day ourselves as individuals. But you start dividing that out, and it's just a massive, massive amount of data that is, about people doing calls. We all have our own anecdotal stories about it, and obviously we've all been in calls where we're in a meeting with 20 or 50 or 100 people and somebody has a bad experience and like 17 people all interrupt each other. Try turning off your video. Try checking your Wi-Fi. And again, these are massively disrupting things to something that people want to use. I like to liken it to back in the days when we used to call it, do I have dial tone in telephony? And you got to experience where telecommunications, it should just work. Okay. But 140 million calls, and we've analyzed this with our cloud platform. 6% of them are bad. It's not just working for anybody, right? And everybody needs it. So this is a pretty important problem space.
And I would add also that there's probably a lot of people in the crowd who would say that their organization has simply said, "Hey, if you're working from home, we're not going to
Yeah.
support your Teams or Zoom call quality issues because you probably have poor Wi-Fi." What if what if you could prove that it wasn't poor Wi-Fi? What if you could prove that it was something on the physical device or a headset or a driver or whatever the case may be that's causing the actual issue, right? That's the power of
It,
this. And like Dave said, this affects a lot of people. Just saying, hey, we will always presume that it's a Wi-Fi issue until you prove otherwise. That's a pretty slippery slope because
yeah.
yeah,
My example for I mean, I knew it wasn't Wi-Fi. I'm not a moron, right? I'm sitting here, and one device is getting 100, 400 fiber to my house, right? I'm getting 100 megabytes a second on one device, and I got zero on the other, and it was working 5 minutes ago. I know it's
right.
not my Wi-Fi; it's something else. And so, patronizing your end users is never a good idea, right? Especially when with something like collaboration experience, you can get ahead of that, so far ahead of that that you're telling them, hey, we think you might be experiencing a problem that we've noticed other people are. Let us do this preventative thing. What a difference that makes.
Absolutely.
Well, and this is something we're seeing a lot in our coverage, and it's something that we've seen. Just this kind of example is just another example of what we've seen occur over and over and over again, and that is that something changes. Obviously, in this case, it was a pandemic. I think collaboration tools were coming, and I think there was a lot of Zoom use. I don't think Teams was quite as prevalent. Certainly, that was kind of, I think, a response and a fairly easy response to stay within the Microsoft suite. But all of a sudden, something changes, and we're really just a little bit of the ways beyond where it all changed. What kind of advice would you offer to IT executives who are now recognizing that we're not going back to normal? This is a real paradigm shift in the way the world is
Yeah.
going to work and their organization is going to work. What would you say to them in terms of thinking through how to approach this
Yep.
issue?
I'll start super simple, and then Justin, if you want to weigh in, that'd be great. But I would basically start with a maxim that's been my entire career in IT, and that is this: if you don't measure it, you cannot manage it. Okay, and if you are not taking Teams and Zoom telemetry and measuring the experience for each and every employee and relating it to everything that's needed to make them successful, how are you going to manage it? You will always be reactive. And the last thing you want to be is reactive with the application that everybody cares about the most, and that's their ability to dynamically have meetings in real time in this changed new world. So that would be the way I would answer it. And that's what Nexthink's all about.
Yeah, in today's topic, that we're talking about today is really around collaboration experience, but there's a lot of data that organizations aren't gathering from those devices today. I mean, this is a fairly new space, right? Like over the past few years, the Nexthink platform, for example, is really started to explode and bring a different approach to gathering that information. Whereas before, maybe we wrote just a simple script to gather a piece of information. But what if you're gathering that on a real-time basis, and then you're taking that information, and now you're also, in addition to improving the lives of everyone within your organization on a daily basis, now you're also extending that to again, as we've been talking about today, Teams call quality issues, Zoom call quality issues, reducing mean time to resolution of support tickets, right? When you have more time to work on things, and you're not just chasing the red all the time, you have the time to now spend on things that are more beneficial to the organization, because it's hard to keep up when you're always behind.
Yep. Again, the Tilder version. If you don't measure it, you can't manage it. Measure it.
100%. Yeah.
Well, and this is why this particular discussion is why we launched the Solution Spotlight series to begin with, is to really take the focus down to something concrete that people can implement and really focus in on. But while we have a few more minutes, let's open up that field of view just a little bit and talk about the Nexthink platform and how that relates to this transformation of organizations, the world of work, how we're all going to really optimize organizational
Yeah. Yeah.
monitoring and
Yeah,
collaboration.
absolutely. Dave, I'll start if you don't mind.
Sure,
I would
absolutely.
just say that, we like to use the smoke detector example, right? Not only do we want to tell you that you have a fire, because, whether we're sleeping or whatever the case may be, maybe we don't even know we have a fire. But when we find out that we have a fire, we also want to know where the fire is, right? And how do I put that fire out? That goes to that see, diagnose, and fix mantra that we've been talking about throughout this entire conversation today. I want to see where the issue is, and I want to see what the issue is. I want to be able to diagnose the issue and really figure out how I can go about resolving it, or figuring out exactly how I should attack it, and then fix it by way of either what we would call remote action, to either go out and get some piece of information or do something, right, in either a manual or automated fashion. Dave?
Yeah, I agree completely, and I would extend it further. And it's really important you want to do that in the context of your ITSM implementation as well. So, for example, wouldn't it be awesome if tickets get opened, your level one support personnel have complete context around that, the employee's device, their configuration, their poor call quality data, everything all automatically available in a ticket? Well, Nexthink can feed all this enriched data that we have into your downstream ITSM on L2, 3 checklists. So that would be one example of really helping you get more proactive, helping you be more effective, and really raising the reputation of IT in total. And again, that's really what Nexthink's really all about. It's what the company was designed around solving, was that employee context of the entire technology.
And I would dig just even one level deeper, and to be able to say that, with Nexthink, you would have the ability to really understand how the binaries that you have running inside of your organization, version wise, compared to that of your Nexthink peers, right? So if I can say that I'm having issues with this specific version of a binary at a 2% rate, or rather, I'm having issues at an 80% rate versus the benchmark, or the rest of the my Nexthink peers, across the nation. If it's happening at an 80% tick in my environment and only at a 2% tick in another environment, that
Benchmarking.
gives me a pretty good indicator that it's probably an environmental issue, not an actual version specific issue. So again, getting to the right team and getting down the right path as quickly as possible is really the way that you can save yourself some time and headache within the organization.
And again, it gets all back to that related data that we have. We have this related data in our platform. You can compare it to others' experience as well, doing the same things. So all sorts of really interesting use cases crop up. We haven't really talked about it here with collaboration experience, but for example, with applications, SaaS licensed applications, or client installed desktop applications, you've got licensing costs. Do you know whether they're actually being used or not? You might have the licenses, but if they're not being used, you could redeploy them or recover cost around those. So there's cost recovery use cases. It's not always just about problem solving.
Yeah.
And
Same
again,
for hardware as well, Dave,
oh,
right? I
exactly,
mean,
exactly,
software reclamation, who knows what the economy is going to do, right? And who knows whether, 3 months from now, we're going to be able to actually get things like CPUs or memory or whatever, to actually build a new machine. So being able to extend the life cycle of existing devices that you have, because if you're on a 3 or a 5 year replacement cycle, for example, maybe now's the time to kind of look at those devices that are performing perfectly well, that wouldn't need to be replaced if not for the fact that we had a very stringent 3 or 5 year life cycle, for example.
exactly. If you're using it and it's working, don't change it. By the way, save some money at the same time. But the key is
Absolutely.
you have to know. You have to have that full visibility.
Well, and in the end, I think the point is a good one, that there is a lot of doubt right now within organizations about what the economy is going to do, and I don't think it's a mystery that there's some cuts being made, and organizations, I think, are looking for ways to create efficiencies, ways to create, you know, more visibility into the organization with maybe fewer people, or maybe they don't have the luxury of support that they may have had in the past. What can you provide in terms of advice to the folks that are looking at some hard decisions in 2023 and beyond, with regard to, you know, how to use technology to create?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, and again I'll go back to the mantra: you got to measure it. You got to start there. Okay. The other big pole in the tent would be automation. You know, IT teams really need to look at their ability to do automated remediation, to deploy systems by which they can do employee self-help, for example. And then thirdly, I would say it's also incumbent upon them to really have an understanding, a finger on the pulse of what is the employee sentiment while using IT. Because there's a lot of hard metrics out there, a lot of technologies. And yes, Nexthink is really good at bringing all those together. But you also need to understand what is the employee's actual experience. Because if your employees using their standard hardware and software configuration, if they rate that as a good experience, are you going to change it? Are you going to upgrade them? You don't need to.
Right.
Oh, by the way, maybe you'll say, maybe that wasn't the real reason. Maybe the real reason was because we learned 6 years ago that we have to update the hardware every 3 years. Otherwise, software rot makes everybody feel like they hate their machine. Again, it's about getting that data, and it's hard metrics and soft metrics. Using that data to solve problems faster, to shift, as Justin likes to call it, and get more proactive, to optimize their vendors, and most of all, to really always and never be surprised.
Yeah, and I would say, Dave, that, you know, lots of organizations have lots and lots of data. They have data, but they don't have it in a consumable way.
Exactly.
That's part of our secret sauce, is giving you the ability to consume that data and not just make it another data point that you have to dig through.
Or dump into a data lake and then try and figure it out retroactively. Exactly.
Exactly. I liked your term earlier, fishing the data lake. That's a really great visualization there of going through the data lake to find the data points that you think will matter, only to find out that that really had nothing to do. You know, the path that you were headed down had really nothing to do with your issue at all.
Yep.
So now you're back at square one.
And by the way, it's a lot of data, folks. Just think about it. I mean,
absolutely.
It's a lot of data.
Well, so who in the organization, if you had your pick, who in the organization would you like to be talking to when you're presenting this value proposition?
I would say anywhere in the management stack within the IT operations or end user computing environment. Obviously, it has a peripheral value, actually a pretty significant peripheral value to, for example, your service desk organization or your application owners, whether they're collaboration teams or whether, you know, business applications. But primarily, first and foremost, it's the people who live and die by being held accountable for ensuring that the IT technology stack in total is delivering appropriate levels of service to the employees.
Yeah, and I would add to that as well to say IT generally, historically, hasn't always looked like the hero, right? A lot of times it's, you know, we're telling people that something's broken, or they're telling us it's broken, and there's that nefarious relationship sometimes. But I would say, you know, that team definitely cares, right? But I think from a higher level, I think the executive team cares, because it really checks the boxes as it relates to those things that we were just talking to before, right? About from a global perspective across my organization, what are the primary things that can make this organization more money? What can make the organization save money, and really spend time focusing on the bigger picture things across the organization that can help not only the IT team be more effective, but everybody inside the organization be both more effective and happier.
Yep. Automation's key. I mentioned that before. You know, for example, with a platform like Nexthink, what you can do is you can take the first time you solve a problem as an L1, L2, L3 specialist, hit the last, because you can then embed that in an automated action. Next time it happens, I know this is what it is. This person needs such and such an executable, or whatever it might be. So
absolutely,
it's kind of a mind shift. And, oh, by the way, the pleasant benefit is not only do you save money and make employees happier, but you improve the overall perception of IT as a true equal seat at the business table within the company.
Yeah, a partner instead of an adversary.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, great. That's a great story. So while we're wrapping up, How would you how would you say is the best way for folks to connect with your team? How long? What should they be thinking about prior to connecting potentially? And also, how long would they be able to? How long would it be before maybe a proof of concept can be developed and
it's pretty straightforward. I'll let Justin speak to the whole timeline around proof of concept, proof of value, but it's real simple to engage with our website. Go to our page, for example, on collaboration experience, and click on "I want a demo," and we'll take care of the rest. So, Justin, if you want to describe that process, it's not particularly invasive, and it doesn't take a significant amount of time.
Yeah, so it's really about getting what we call our collectors installed on devices across the organization. Typically, a fairly small subset, generally around 1,000-ish devices, or anywhere between 500 to 1,000 devices, kind of thing, or really a broad subset of different personas and types of devices across the organization, whether it be Windows devices or Mac OS, for example. We do support iGel as well. But I would just say, the typical POV process, if you are, if we can qualify you as a good candidate for a POV for that matter, is typically about an 8-week process, which again is really partly making sure that you're getting the data that your organization needs to make good decisions, in addition to, making sure that we're training you on how to hit the ground running, because most organizations, when they see the power of Nexthink, they're like, where do I sign up?
And
right?
and where do I start? Exactly.
Where do I start, and how can you help me?
And one thing that is super helpful, back to your original question, Doug, is think about if you're engaging Nexthink, think about, maybe is there 1 or 2 or 3 applications that are really, the burr in my saddle right now, as opposed to just coming and say, I just want to generally see what it is. No, think about what your real pain drivers are, so we can rapidly get that prescription pain medicine, if you will.
Right.
Yeah,
and
honestly,
that's what.
So go ahead, Justin.
Well, I was just going to say that's what our account team would definitely help with, in order to be able to qualify and make sure that, maybe not every organization is a great fit, but what we see is that most organizations are a great fit. It's just really finding those business cases and success criteria to ensure that we are doing the things that are going to be most impactful to not only, our IT team, but also the executive team as well, that's really going to focus on those big picture things that need to be accomplished within the organization. My apologies, Doug.
No, not at all. I only wanted to jump in because I wish more people would take that advice of approaching these sorts of interactions with purpose, rather than just kind of
tire kicking,
thinking about it and tire kicking. Because in the end, there's a lot of value you can get out of it, and in the end, you should want to get the maximum amount of out of value out of a consideration cycle like that. So, very good advice indeed. This has been great. This is exactly what we want to see when we focus our spotlight on a solution. So, thanks very much today. Appreciate the time, and best of luck throughout the year going forward. We know we'll be keeping an eye on Nexthink, and this was a great way for us to spend some time today.
Awesome.
Hey, we're very excited. Lots of great things happening. So thanks for having us today.
Thanks for having us, Doug.
You bet. Well, there you have it. Another solution in our spotlight. We want to thank Nexthink and Dave and Justin for their fine presentation, and we appreciate your attendance as well. Until next time, I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review. Thanks for watching.